Welcome to Films and Stuff with your hosts, Pete Mitchell and Ethan Hunt.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Films and Stuff podcast. I am Ethan, joined next to me, virtually speaking, Pete. Hey, Pete, what's up today?
Not much, buddy. How are you?
All good, all good. Today is Saturday. That means it is time for our weekly stream or skip segment. I introduce a segment. You introduce the rules for new listeners or to remind existing listeners. So without further ado, my friend, give us the synopsis of what is stream or skip.
All right. So Ethan and I have prepared lists of TV shows for each other to watch. We randomly assign each other one show every week. We have to watch at least 2 episodes or 30 minutes if it's a feature-length program. And on that basis, we determine if that show is worthy of being streamed or skipped.
Right, you are. And we've had up weeks, we've had down weeks, we've had meh weeks, we've had weeks that we've had a lot to say. I feel like this week was a pretty good week for both of us, right?
Not too bad.
You were on Netflix.
Yeah, that's right.
And you had something called Monsters.
Yeah, it's a buzzy show.
Yeah, a buzzy show. You're right. It's a docuseries, a docudrama. How do you describe it?
Yeah, so let's go through it. So Monsters is a true crime docuseries. It's an episodic biopic of the Menendez brothers. Now, for our younger listeners, this was like, at least in my lifetime, and I would wager in yours as well, probably the first true crime saga.
What year is this?
This was like 89.
This is before OJ?
This is before OJ.
Whoa.
Yeah, but I think OJ was probably the more famous one because that was probably a worldwide phenomenon.
Yeah.
But I think the Menendez brothers, at least in my lifetime, was the first true crime thing, right? We're too young for the Summer of Sam and all those other crazy serial murders.
Yeah.
We're definitely too young for the Zodiac Killer.
Yeah.
I can't think of any other true crime story because I think even Tanya Harding was after this.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Oh, that's really interesting when you put it into a historical context like this, because I feel like it is one of those, as you mentioned, kind of like pop culture crime stories.
Yeah.
That everyone kind of is aware of, but I feel like the details are very fuzzy to almost everybody.
Right, exactly.
Including me.
Okay, so let's go through it. So the Menendez brothers, just as a very quick and dirty recap, they are the sons of Cuban-American immigrants, settled in Los Angeles, and the father is extremely wealthy and has made a big success of himself, and he had like political aspirations, not just for himself, but also for his boys, right? He truly believed in the American, quote unquote, the dream, right? Which is, we can come into America as immigrants, we can settle ourselves, we can make something of ourselves, and if everything goes well, our children can become politicians. Right? And, one day my son can be the president kind of dream. For the rest of us who didn't really know the ins and out of the Menendez brothers or the Menendez family, right? We just thought of them as like these 2 kids who killed their parents, which, spoiler alert. I mean, the statute of limitations has to go.
Oh, yeah. We're 20 plus years away for sure.
So the show picks up immediately in the aftermath of the boys killing their parents. In fact, the opening sequence is of the boys in a limousine heading to the funeral. The perspective of the show is that it's current day, as in, we're in the late 80s, early 90s. And there's a little bit of flashbacking right? So we learn about how they set up the murders and why they set up the murders. It was like both of the parents were emotionally abusive. There may have been some physical abuse. We learn, like, the boys are kind of F-ups, right? They're not really, but at the same time, they kind of might be. One of them, the younger one, Eric, is like this tennis star, but he's not that good, or he's not as good as his dad wants him to be. Then the other one is like getting kicked out of Princeton for plagiarism or something like that. The grass is always greener on the other side. Like we always think it looks like that, but it's really not.
Okay.
It's really not. The situation wasn't good. The second episode, and I'm breezing through this, okay? The second episode kind of highlights the actual day of the murder, like why they commit the murder, how they commit the murder, and the actual process of setting up the alibi, acquiring the weapons, that kind of thing.
Are they like psychopath?
That's the thing. So they're sociopaths, but it's between the two of them. Eric seems to be like the more remorseful, somber, serious one. Who's kind of like regretting the whole thing. He's the one who's struggling. He has emotional problems now because, obviously he killed his parents. Lyle seems like he's the crazy one who's a little bit full of himself. The typical stereotype that you see. One of them is the more aggressive one of them is the more conservative one.
Yeah. So one's the mastermind and the other one's just kind of the one that went along with it.
That's right. And then one of them, and funnily enough, the idea was actually the younger brothers. It was Eric's who was like, we should do that. Right. But then it's Lyle who then he's like, yeah, that's a great idea. And he really runs with it.
So it was totally premeditated.
Oh, 100%. So now, okay. So there's the other question, which this doesn't really go through. This is a biopic, but it's also dramatized, right? We're seeing this as it happens. This isn't one of those true crime podcasts that goes through interviews and things like that. So how much of that is dramatized? How much of that is real?
Yeah.
Big question mark. Yeah.
Okay.
But that's actually kind of what makes this show really compelling. First of all, in terms of set design and things like that, it really feels like you're back in the late 80s, early 90s. I was feeling super nostalgic. In fact, Milli Vanilli was playing all through the first episode. And the episode's actually called Blame It on the Rain.
Oh, okay.
It's kind of fun like that. And then the way they framed this series is that the brothers, Eric decides to tell his therapist everything.
Oh.
He admits to the murder, blah, blah, blah. Now, here's where the first major issue I have comes from. I was under the impression that as therapist, you have doctor-patient confidentiality unless a crime has been committed.
Yeah, that's my very general understanding as well, is that you've got an obligation to report crimes.
Right. And so he openly admits to his therapist, because he's having nightmares, he can't go to sleep and things like that, that he killed his parents with his brother. Lyle then says at the end of the episode, he's like, well, now we have to kill him too.
Oh, so his brother not just told his therapist, he told his brother that he told his therapist.
Actually, his therapist calls him up from the middle of the session and says, you need to come down here and I'm going to treat both of you together.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Full disclosure, I've only watched 2 episodes, but I'll tell you right now, based on after the first episode, this was a must subscribe.
Okay.
It's highly intriguing. It's very compelling. It's also a little bit nostalgic, and I suspect it'll be a little bit nostalgic for you as well, because it's that era that you and I grew up in. So a lot of those things will resonate with us.
Childhood memories.
Yeah. And then, of course, there's also that element of we both grew up with these things happening, and it was a part of the media firestorm at the time. Great show. I highly recommend.
The spoiler alert is that initially, as I recall, it was someone broke into their parents' house and killed them. And then eventually their alibi or story unraveled. And they were actually convicted then of killing their parents, right?
Yes, that's how I remember it as well. Like if you go through that second episode where they're building up their alibi, you can start to
Yeah.
see where it's going to start falling apart and unraveling.
Yeah.
But like Lyle was doing his best. He was like, all right, this is definitely premeditated. So like they go to the cinema and they try to buy tickets for an earlier movie, the Batman
Mm.
movie, and the cinema refuses to sell them tickets because it's already past that, right? They were trying to buy the tickets for the 9 o'clock show at 10
Oh, I see.
o'clock. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? So they were trying to set it up. So then they decide, okay, let's go to the hotel bar and, let's make an ass of ourselves in front of everyone. So when people think about that night, they'll remember us being there, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Interesting because it's, first of all, a compelling story. It's a compelling, well, not story, but it's a compelling, like, news item.
Right.
And the other thing is that, again, I mean, I keep harping on about it, but like, I couldn't help but feel that wave of like, oh man, I remember all of this when we were younger.
Yeah. I think this is where Netflix really does well when it takes kind of these stories and it makes them into like a little mini series. I think it's a very, very sweet spot for Netflix that no one else does. Apple doesn't do it quite like that. Definitely Amazon Prime doesn't do it like that. HBO or Max or whatever they are now doesn't do it like that. I think it's really an area that Netflix has kind of cornered. And I'd like to see them actually do more of these because I think they're not terribly expensive. They don't really need expensive actors or cast. And they could probably churn these out, one a month if they really wanted to.
Yeah, and we've kind of seen that they've, I don't remember if it was Netflix who did it, but remember they
Yeah.
did the OJ trial series
Yes.
with Ross from Friends,
David
David
Schwimmer.
Schwimmer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then of course there was that I, Tanya movie about Tanya
Yeah.
Harding. So, but there's
Yeah.
no shortage of these kinds of dramatic, let's say newsworthy moments, right?
Yeah. I agree. I think they could probably absolutely come up with another 12 or so. They
Yeah.
could do something about Michael Jackson. They could do multiple scandals, I think, are available that they could do.
Yeah. Again, this is a must subscribe for a couple of reasons. I think that for people in our age bracket, for people in our generational bracket,
Mhm.
this is a no-brainer because it was a part of the cultural zeitgeist at the time for us. And
Mhm.
again, there's a special place for these kinds of things in our lives because it really was the first for us, right? Or at least the
Yeah.
first that we were old enough to be cognizant of.
So you give this a must subscribe. It's called Monster on Netflix.
Yeah, absolutely. Highly recommend.
Okay. Turning the page, you had assigned me something called The Franchise on Max. I think you had heard of this, and I think you were kind of like anticipating it. I had not heard of it, but I watched 7, so I still have to watch the season finale. It's one season. It is a satirical comedy. They're 30, 45-minute episodes, very short. I've given this a mooch, and there's a lot of interesting things about it, to be honest. I enjoyed it, as you can tell, because I watched, more than 2 episodes. Let's talk about the premise first and then the cast. So the premise is group of actors, director, producers are on location and they are filming something called Tecto, which is basically a superhero, which it's very thinly veiled as this is part of, analogous to Marvel Cinematic Universe,
Right.
kind of like Avengers, and this is maybe like the Captain America or Iron Man or someone, or the DC extended universe, the equivalent of Batman or someone. So Billy Magnuson, he plays Tecto, who is a superhero. I mean, it's definitely a satirical comedy, and it's very, very British and very, very subtle. I've enjoyed it but it's not a laugh out loud type comedy. It's more of a funny situational comedy. And some of it seems to hit home like almost too well. So for example, I would expect that if you worked or were involved in like an MCU production, whether it's Avengers or Thor or something, you would think that some of these storylines came directly from the movie that you were working on.
Okay.
So I think some of these things not taken from the headlines, but probably taken from war stories, that happened on set, or maybe they're just very common things. You've got, Billy Magnuson, for example, is the A-lister. He's a star. He's very, very insecure, right? And there's a lot of examples of his insecurity, and I'm sure that's rooted in, real life pieces, from some other, actors. So the cast is fantastic. Himesh Patel, who I can't place in anything, even when I look at him on IMDb, but he's been in a number of things. He's the first AD, assistant director. Daniel Bruhl, he plays the director. Richard Grant, yes, as well. And I think that everyone plays their role extraordinarily well. But the humor is very, very subtle. So, for example, one of the characters, Dag, her last name is Nweze. And someone at one point asks her, how do you spell that? And it's spelled Nwazee, which is obviously reference to, the rap group NWA, and
Right.
Eazy-E, who was, kind of like one of the main components of that rap group, right?
Right.
So that's funny, that her name is Nweze and it's spelled Nwazee. Like, that's funny to me, or it's very clever to me.
Right.
But it's not like a laugh out loud, like ha 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 ha, knee slapping thing. It's said very fast. It's funny to me, and I would catch it. My mom wouldn't catch it. My dad wouldn't catch it. None of my siblings would catch it, right? You really had to know the rap group NWA to catch the joke and to find it funny. So it's a good example of a lot of the humor, which is very, very fast, dry, a little bit offbeat, and it's more situational comedy. So for example, there's a similar to like MCU, right? You've got like the Infinity Stones. There's a crystal, and they show, how big should the crystal be, and can we make it sparkly? There's a lot of kind of like situational humor, which I'm sure is something that, the MCU or DC Extended Universe experienced as well. You've got, obviously there's another competing franchise. So like, for example, they've got, simultaneously filming, but kind of like a rival film is the equivalent of the Avengers. And they're just kind of like one character, right? They're Tecto. So they're kind of like the standalone film. So there's, different like issues in terms of who's going to make a cameo. They get this horrible guy to make a cameo that they don't want him. There's a very funny scene about product placement. So, for example, they want to get into the Chinese market. So the Chinese government says, if you do a product placement, we'll let you into our cinemas. So they say, fine. And they agree to this, right? What's a product? It's a farm tractor, so they're like, Daniel Bruhl's like, how am I supposed to put a farm tractor in outer space? He's like, where is it supposed to go? Right. So they try putting it like in the loading dock where there's all these like spaceships parked and the tractor is there.
Okay.
It's funny, but it's not really that funny. Whenever the tractor backs up, or like whenever they drive it on the set, it says in China, danger, equipment moving forward, or something like that in Chinese. So it's funny, but it's not really for everybody. It's more situational comedy.
It's satirical, right?
And clever. And it is satirical. I liked it. I mean, I thought it was very light. I did find like the tractor scene I find very funny, and how they actually got the tractor scene in, spoiler alert. there was like a very emotional like deathbed scene where Tecto, Billy Magnuson's character, is kind of like mourning his, I don't know, wife or girlfriend, like in the hospital, right? And Daniel Bruhl is like, this is my this is my scene. I need this scene. And the studio wanted to cut it out. They're like, look, this is an action superhero movie. We don't need like this deathbed scene. So Brule actually puts the tractor in the background, right? In a hospital, which makes no sense at all. So that the studio can't cut the scene because it's a scene where the product placement is in, right? So is that funny and clever or like corporately diabolical? It's all those things. But you don't really like laugh, ha ha ha. There's a tractor in the background. It's more like that's kind of bonkers, that's kind of silly, right? So I gave this a mooch. I enjoyed it, but not so much that, we know what our definitions are. It's not a must subscribe. I would not pay for this. I'm not dying for a season 2, although I think there's probably going to be a season 2. Like all the characters, no one is horrible to watch. I mean, you've heard me ruminate about Yellowstone enough and how much I dislike Beth as a character.
Right.
There's some other shows where, a character just drives me bonkers and I can't stand it. No one here is really dislikable or unlikable. On the other hand, I mean, there's definitely no Harvey from Suits in here, right? I mean, there's no aspirational character. It's a very, very funny show. Everyone plays their role very well. The writing is fantastic. I feel like this is a show that's going to be like, if I were a writer or the producer of this show, I'd be like, this is an all-time show. Why isn't this getting the same love as like Arrested Development or Curb Your Enthusiasm or The Office or, some of the all-time greats? And I think it's because it's almost too subtle, too niche, too fast and clever for a wide audience.
Right.
But I could see that there would be a small but very passionate cult following of this show. Like I said, I really enjoyed it, but it's certainly not a must subscribe. But for me, it's a mooch, and I think you'd enjoy it as well. But I think you'd come back the same way, which is watched a few episodes, put it down, and then you just kind of like forgot about it for like a few weeks until, you saw it like in your stream again. It's not oh my gosh, I've got to see how this ends, or oh my gosh, I've got to stay up until 2 a.m. and finish this. It's not a binge-worthy series, but it's definitely hey, I really enjoyed those last 30 minutes. That was a good one. All right, time to move on and get back to work or go to bed or something like that,
Right.
So that is The Franchise on Max.
All right. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, honestly, it sounds like something that's right up my alley. So
yeah, I think definitely your sense of humor, I think, is similar to mine. I think, we're obviously interested in the entertainment genre. I think you'd enjoy it. And then I kind of expect you'll come away with the same ranking, actually.
perfect.
All right. Turning our attention to next week. What do we got? What are the assignments?
All right. Well, you and I are both on Netflix next week.
All right.
I am watching a show called Bank Under Siege. Never heard of it, but the title already has me.
Oh, you love a good heist.
I do love a good heist. And you are watching, again, another buzzy show that just came out called Black Doves. I don't know anything about it, but I believe it's a spy thriller.
I love a spy thriller. All right.
Exactly. So I think we're both going to be quite pleased.
Looking forward to that. Super. So we'll both be on Netflix next week. Let's see what our rankings are. Pete, read off our YouTube jazz and all the other things people can do to ring the bell and show us some love and send comments and so forth.
All right. Tweet at us at F&S Podcast. DM us on Instagram at Films and Stuff Podcast. But as always, the best thing you can do, like this video, leave a comment below, hit the subscribe button, and hit that notification bell.
Could not have said it better myself. Pete, thank you for the review of Monster and Franchise. And we will see everybody next week when we have 2 new Netflix reviews on the Films and Stuff Podcast. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone.
Bye now.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Films and Stuff. If you haven't already, please subscribe and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever podcasts are downloaded. Films and Stuff. There is no substitute.